Right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Welcome to the council meeting of October 9th, 2017. And please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start tonight's meeting with announcements, and I'll start on my right with Ms. Howard. Any announcements this evening?
Yes, tomorrow is the flu clinic and health fair being put on by the Princeton Health Department at the Suzanne Patterson Center from 1 to 6 p.m. And I want to credit Jeff for a good line, help us bring immunity to the community.
I bet he stole it.
Mr. Liverman, and please make yours rhyme too.
Okay. You have to not really. Just that yesterday, Saturday, we had the Unity Walk in town. We met here at the municipality and walked up to the library, and there was a lot of people that were honored in town, and it was okay. Usually, we hear about the Unity Walk a lot earlier, but this time it was kind of, I guess, put together in a quickly fashion so that they could have it on that Saturday, but it turned out fairly well. Thank you.
Lance, could I just, I don't know how, I didn't know about it. I don't.
Yeah, I didn't know about it until 2 weeks ago. So,
Okay.
yeah. No,
So-
I didn't know. The organizer is a young lady by the name of Tatiana Sims, and at the time, she's a student at NYU, and it's time for her to coordinate both things. So she came back to try to put it on and did a fairly great job, but I think in the future, it has to be done a little earlier in time.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Cormiller?
I don't know if I talked about this last time or anybody talked about it at the last meeting, but Ace Hardware is now handling our leaf bags. So if people want to pick up a leaf bag, they can, Princeton residents can get them from Ace Hardware, and apparently the first week they gave out 1,000 of them. So it was very successful as far as disseminating leaf bags.
Excellent. Ms. Butler?
No reports, no announcements.
And Mr. Quinn?
Yeah, just a couple things. I mentioned that yesterday on Heinz Plaza, several of us attended the Latino Cultural Festival, which was a rousing success. Rain could not dampen the spirit there, although it really did try. And we found out today that Sustainable Princeton has again received silver certification from Sustainable Jersey with 525 points, 75 more points than the last certification. And when you go to, thank you very much. When you go to thank Sustainable Princeton, they will say that they're thanking us as a community for being forward-looking. Some of the stuff that got us additional points this year were improving municipal government with efforts such as Access Princeton and more web-based forms for applications, promoting the use of less polluting transportation options with EV charging infrastructure in Spring Street Garage, improving our construction and demolition waste recycling ordinance, adopting a green purchasing policy, lead education and outreach programs, community gardens, bicycle and pedestrian audit, and having an emergency communications plan. So many of the stuff that we get down into the weeds on, we see now it grows into silver. So
Terrific. I had a couple announcements. The first is, this isn't happening for a while, but this is a important issue for a lot of people, is parking in Princeton, and we're going to be having a special meeting of council on November 20th, where we'll hear from the parking consultant on the parking study that's been ongoing. There's going to be an open house between 6:30 and 7 p.m. that evening here in this room, and then starting at 7, there'll be the presentation. And this will be the last opportunity for public comment on the report before it's formally presented to council for approval. And also, there's going to be a series of goal-setting meetings coming up. I know we're still in 2017, but we like to look ahead, and this is, in the fall is usually the beginning of our goal-setting session for the coming year. So we're going to be having 2 meetings with our boards, committees, and commission chairs. They're both open to the public. The first is going to be on Wednesday morning, October 18th, and that will be with the representatives from our boards and commissions that have to do with health, youth, and social services. And then the second meeting will be on Tuesday, October 24th, and that will focus on commissions having to do with planning and transportation. And both those meetings start at 8 a.m. and they're 2-hour, we have a hard stop at 10. And I think both those meetings are planned for the community room, which is the first room as you walk down the hall. Are there any staff announcements? Nope. Okay. Then we'll move on to comments from the public for items that are not already on the agenda. And we'll start with the sign-up sheet that was on the podium, and then we'll open it up to anybody else who'd like to speak. And I'd like to ask folks to try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. And we will start with Lisa Wu.
Evening. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Good evening. I came tonight to plead it with the council member to extend the freebie bus. I often ride on the freebie bus, and first of all, I don't know when it's going to make a decision and when will be implemented. Will that be 1st of January 2018? And right now, the schedule is only for 6 days. I would like to ask to extend it, including Sunday, because a lot of senior in the senior housing, especially my building, they go to church every week, and a lot of it they don't drive. It would be nice that they have a transportation provide for them. And I also like to know, previously I discussed what was the result of decision from the member of council that I addressed on August 7th, September 11th, September 25th. Anybody can let me know about the nutrition lunch? I've been asking for bring it back to Princeton.
Right. So actually, Mr. Grosser and I had a meeting this morning with Ms. Hoskins from the Senior Resource Center, and we are working on trying to figure out a location here in Princeton that will work. And we've been working with the county, and we hope to be able to do that soon.
But you know, for past 2 years, almost 2 years, because I was told December 2015 was the last meal they served in Princeton. So it's already October 2017. Could you give me at least approximately time when that would be? It's like a year from now, a couple months, or?
I would hope that it would be a matter of months, not a matter of years.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I know my time's up, so I'm going to save it for next time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I also wanted to add just that at our next meeting on October 23rd, we are going to be hearing a presentation about the freebie and about the schedule for the freebie. So I invite you back on October 23rd.
I'm so sorry. I will be out of town.
Oh, no.
I'm so sorry because
Okay.
I have to visit my relative. So I will be back the first meeting, the second Monday of November. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
But
All
I'm
right,
so
well, we'll
glad.
miss you.
I appreciate your invitation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yael, Niv?
Okay. What's the right distance here? Is this okay? Okay. So my name is Yael Niv, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Princeton Progressive Action Group. Many of you know us. We got together after the election, and we come to council meetings and sit over there. I wanted to present the group's newly crafted vision and mission statements so that you can know how you can utilize us. So the mission statement reads, the Princeton Progressive Action Group works to ensure that Princeton is an environmentally sustainable town where access to opportunity is shared fairly by socially, racially, and economically diverse people. So that's our vision. To realize this vision, Princeton Progressive Action Group advocates for municipal plans, programs, policies, and projects that increase availability of housing for all ages and incomes, safe streets for all ages and means of transport, services that support learning, recreation, and community engagement, and economic initiatives that support employment and thriving and sustainable local businesses. So in short, our goal is to help Princeton and the council, you, to keep the big picture of our shared values in mind when decisions are being made. It's all too easy to take each decision in its own right and eventually find ourselves moving away from our values and the big picture of how we want Princeton to be. We're here to help ensure that that doesn't happen. So what are our shared values? I can state them best through what they're not. Many of us are appalled by what we hear of travel bans, a wall, revoking the immigration status of people who are hardworking and committed members of our society. But when we look inward to our own community, we have to be honest about whether at Princeton we are really living our own values of openness and generosity to others. Do we have an invisible wall around our town that keeps those who are not wealthy enough or who don't have a certain background away? Are we living our own values when contributing members of our town, teachers in our schools, employees in our service sector, can't afford to live in town? So we at Princeton Progressive Action believe in the progressive values of equal opportunity. We believe that the children of our school teachers should be able to enjoy the excellent school system that we have without a lengthy commute. Our older community members shouldn't have to move away from their supportive environment as they age. And we do not want to price our own children out of living here when they grow up, even if their career is not extremely lucrative. So this means supporting more density in a more walkable and livable town. We support growth, diversity, and density so that we can look our children in the eye and know that we're living the values that we teach them. We support growth because it's the right thing to do, to share our wealth of a great town with others who only want the best for their kids and who are willing to work hard for that. And also because newcomers make for a dynamic, interesting, vibrant, rejuvenating town. The world changes around us all the time. If we try to stand in place and resist the forward progress, we will be left behind. So finally, as an example, I want to remark on a specific issue that came up, I think 2 meetings ago, the senior housing development planned for North Harrison Street. Fire safety is obviously important for any new development, but this is where we need to view decisions within the larger picture. What is safer, more environmentally conscious, and fairer to our older community members than living nearby in a location where they can walk to amenities and where they can afford to age in place in their community? While all fire safety codes should be adhered to, we should make sure not to add hurdles to this development that will end up making it unnecessarily expensive or even unfeasible. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Rubin? You pass? Okay. All right. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on something that's not already on the agenda? And I just want to, before Lane goes, thank you, Yael, and I want to thank your group too. You guys have been spending a lot of thought on future of the town, and I know it's helpful for all of us. Your thoughts are very well crafted, and it's always helpful for us to take a step back and listen to the vision and listen to your comments. Thank you. Leighton.
Hi, Mayor, Council, Leighton Newell, Birch Avenue. I'm not going to be long-winded tonight. I just want to make one suggestion. I drive in this town every day from Birch Avenue to Princeton Junction and head to Newark, come back, same route. The crosswalks are dangerous. They're dangerous because the people who are crossing the sidewalks now, mostly university students, but everybody, on often occasions, you know, the vehicles, the pedestrian always has the right of way. I get that. But they also got to think. And what these kids are doing is they are assuming that every car is going to stop. And rather than them, like anybody crossing the street would, stop, even though there's a crosswalk there, and look both ways, they're not. Day before yesterday, I had a bicyclist drive right into the side of my car because he just came across. The other thing that I find that the children or even just general people are doing is not making enough of a assessment of how close a car is to the crosswalk before they actually feel they can walk across safely with you giving time to see them. So what I'm suggesting is the people we can get to is the university, and maybe we could have a collaboration effort to alert students and people, especially from the university, that this is a problem, because sooner or later, and I'm sure it's happened to most people in this room, somebody's going to get hit. And maybe we can come up with a nice marketing, something fun, that has the pedestrians stop and really check before they go across, and also a way where visitors to Princeton who don't drive here all the time, you know, may understand that you have to stop at every one of these crosswalks. Somebody's going to get hurt, and probably somebody already has. That's just a
Thank you.
suggestion.
Jenny, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know, Leighton, that the police department, wait, is Nick here? Because maybe at the next meeting we can ask, or that the police officers here, the Greater Mercer Transportation Management Association and our police department have worked together last year, and they're doing it again this year. It's called the Street Smart campaign, and it's a lot of it is geared toward pedestrian safety, and they're going to have officers in certain areas. So if you have a specific area, let me know. I mean, I'll pass that on. Or
Well, Jenny, it's basically 5 key areas. It's the new
Sorry to
Well,
make
we'll
you
tell-
got to talk in the mic.
No, oh, I thought it was-
Well, from my travel routes, it starts really down at the Lower Canal, but that's not really a town issue. But across from the New Arts Theater, coming up to across McCarter Theater, especially coming up to that next short little span that goes from when you walk into the top of McCarter Theater across to the university at the very top, that's real dangerous, especially at night, because most cars don't realize they need to stop. And then there's all Nassau Street, but in particular from well, no, you can even start where the church is at, from the church all the way down, just about all the way down till you get to the new Carnivale building. It really is an issue. The kids, most people are just assuming the car is going to stop, and they don't always stop. So, you know, that's on the car side, but on the walker side, the Street Smart, hopefully it works.
we want to educate both the drivers and the pedestrians.
Well,
And the bicyclists get hung up in that too.
as a former member of the Traffic and Transportation, I know that it's a concern of the university, and every year we get a huge influx of new students who are maybe not sophisticated or don't, and the fact is that the cars are supposed to stop. But I agree with you, particularly with the increased activity down at the new Arts Center, it's all pretty tricky. But tomorrow is, by the way, National Put the Brakes on Fatalities Day. I don't want to steal Heather's thunder by announcing that, but I actually saw the police posted this, yes, put the brakes on fatalities. So supposedly they're going to be out tomorrow enforcing even more proactively
Speed, so
crosswalk
don't speed.
speeding, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to something that's not already on the agenda? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to presentations, and we have a presentation tonight from Shirley Satterfield and from Bob Hillier, and this is a project they've been working on together for Heritage Trail of the history of the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Satterfield.
Okay. Good evening, council members. I'm Shirley Satterfield. Excuse me, I'm hoarse today. It will be a year and a half in 2 days when you kindly gave approval of our district being the 20th Historic District in Princeton. Thank you. I take this opportunity again to thank those of you who had the final positive vote. I said that. Each time I give a walking tour or a PowerPoint presentation, those attending always mention that they are glad that this community has finally been recognized as a historic district. Many continue to tell if there will be signage for the designated historical African American sites. That is why Robert Hillier and I are here on behalf of the Witherspoon Jackson Historical and Cultural Society to present information as to why an African American historical trail or tour signage would be welcomed in Princeton. To introduce our plans, I will give some history and facts to support the need for the designated historic sites. Princeton remained a small town until the middle of the 18th century, when a stagecoach line from Trenton to New Brunswick came through what is now Route 27. Also, the presence of the College of New Jersey that moved from Newark to Nassau Hall in 1756, bringing students, resulting in an increase in wealth and population. The African American community has been a vital presence in Princeton since the late 17th century. Many residents were slaves who worked on large farms and in homes as domestic and agricultural servants. Many were slaves to the early presidents and trustees of the College of New Jersey. John Witherspoon, 6th president of the College of New Jersey, who was president during the Revolutionary period, owned slaves. In fact, at his death, he owned 2 slaves valued at $100 each. Richard Stockton, class of 1779, and a trustee of the college from 1791 to 1828, owned several slaves. Both Witherspoon and Stockton, as you know, were signers of the Declaration of Independence. New Jersey was very conservative on the slavery question, and Mercer County and the town of Princeton were no exceptions. By the 1700s, there were free colored residents who were descendants of slaves, and in later years, many had migrated to Princeton from the South to find employment. Princeton, according to the 1870 census, had 448 colored residents in the borough and 119 in the township, whose occupations ranged from domestic workers to merchants. Princeton, according to the 1870 census, the increased wealth in the community, together with the university's growth, created a high demand for labor and service positions that were generously offered to the colored residents. Many were families who moved to Princeton from southern states. These families were relegated to the area known as the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood. The Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood spans from Jackson Street to Birch Avenue, and the perimeters being Witherspoon and John Streets. In fact, the section of Witherspoon Street from Jackson Street to Birch Avenue was called African Alley or Guinea Lane. John Street, like Witherspoon Street, continued from Birch Avenue all the way to Nassau Street. It was a two-way street. The block after Halford Street going down Witherspoon was Jackson Street, the beginning of what is known as the colored section of Princeton. You all have some information about the different sites that we would like to see on the Heritage Trail. They're not in the order that I'm just going to give just a review, but follow along. The first establishments in the Witherspoon-Jackson community were the four churches. I'm not going to give the history, I'm just going to tell you what they were because you have the history there. The oldest church was Mount Pisgah AME Church. AME, African Methodist Episcopal, located on the corner of Witherspoon and McLean Streets. One person who was here today, Leighton Newland's family, are members of this church. Then there's Witherspoon Street Presbyterian Church, located on the corner of Witherspoon and Quarry Streets. It was established in 1840 as the first Presbyterian church of color in Princeton. My family is 6 generations in that church. Then there is the First Baptist Church that was established in 1885. The cornerstone was laid for the first Bright Hope Baptist Church, and in 1930, the name was changed to the First Baptist Church. Your council member, Lance Liverman, is a member of that church. Then there is Morning Star Church of God in Christ, located on Birch Avenue. This Pentecostal congregation worshiped in a small house next to the present church. It was established in 1941. The Lee family is known to be one of the establishers of this church. Minnie Craig and Mamie Oldham are members of this family. The second institutions are the public schools. Betsy Stockton, who was a slave to the Stockton family, was taught by Ashbel Green, president of Princeton University. She taught the colored children in a small building on Witherspoon Street that was provided by the Women's Association of the First Presbyterian Church. In 1851, the state of New Jersey authorized the incorporation of schools in Princeton Borough. Because Princeton was a segregated town, a separate school was built in 1873 on Witherspoon Street. The Witherspoon School for Colored Children educated children from kindergarten through 8th grades. When the students graduated from 8th grade, they either had to go down south or they had to go to Trenton to high school. When the school was too small, there was a school built on Quarry Street on February 29th, 1908. And the children went to this school until it was integrated in 1948. Then there are the fraternal organizations. The fraternal organizations and the YWCA were the institutions where the colored residents socialized, had meetings, activities, and religious and social events. These organizations were segregated because the colored men and women were not welcomed into the white Masonic or Elks clubs. There's a Masonic temple, the Elks Club, the Charles Robinson American Legion, Post 218. This American Legion was named after Charles Robinson, a World War I soldier who was the first Princetonian to lose his life in this war. The Charcoal Inn, not a fraternal organization, but a private social club for colored men in the community. Then there was the Colored Y, which is on the corner of Green and Witherspoon, which is now housed by the Princeton what is it? The Arts Council. Then there's businesses, and there's too many business to announce today because we were not allowed on Nassau Street. There were businesses in our family homes. There were businesses almost on every corner, and this is where we had the barber shops, the beauty parlors, the ice cream shops, the candy stores, and the grocery stores. Then there was a Citizen. It was a newspaper that was dedicated to the moral, intellectual, and industrial improvement of the Negro race. Many businesses advertised in the paper, such as R.E. Hall, Mr. Hines' grandfather, who had a grocery store on Witherspoon Street, and Benjamin Robeson, Paul Robeson's uncle, who advertised for General Cellar Cleaning. The publishing establishment was located at 9 Witherspoon Street, which was once LaHare's restaurant. There's the Imperial Restaurant, owned by Mr. Griggs, that was on the corner of Hallfish and Witherspoon Streets. That's why that's called now the Griggs Corner. There was an ice plant on Clay Street, owned by Mr. George Barkley, Leighton Newland's uncle, and Mr. Teague. Then there was Jimmy Mac's Barbershop, and that was one of the highlights of my tour. When I gave the tour, I would tell Mr. Hines, please come out and tell people about this. And a lot of university students would come down and get their hair cut. And he said, oh, this used to be a speakeasy, and a lot of kids didn't know what a speakeasy was. It was a beauty parlor, and it was a residence. And Mr. Mack retired 3 years ago. And his sign, I said, Mr. Mack, what are you going to do with that sign? He said, I guess I'll throw it away. Well, it's in the Historical Society. And then he was sitting on his bench. And I said, Mr. Mack, what are you going to do about that bench? Well, I guess I'll throw it out. That's in my dining room. So you have to save everybody's things for posterity. Then there is the Henry Austin home, which is located on John Street. And Henry Austin was a physician. And because he couldn't practice in Princeton, he went to Trenton. And there are 4 Henry Austin medical centers in Trenton named after him. While his family moved out, there was Mr. Robert Ball. And everybody who's at least 50 years old knows about going to Mr. Ball's candy store. And those who went to the Baptist church, the kids would use all of their Sunday school money to buy candy at Mr. Ball's. Then there is Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore came from North Carolina, and he owned several properties on Witherspoon Street. But the ones that are known the most are the 2 buildings on Spring Street. And he owned those 2 buildings. I can't remember the addresses. But one side was an antique furniture store, and one of his antique desks were put in Woodrow Wilson's office. On the other side was a used clothing store, and a lot of students from the university would come and sell their suits so that they'd have money to go to New York. When he no longer owned the buildings, one side became his daughter's Christine Moore Howe beauty parlor, and she only catered to upscale women. But in the back of her beauty parlor, she had a cosmetic lab where she made all of her beauty products. Then there's Palmer Square, and you all know about Palmer Square. In 1926, Edgar Palmer, who was a graduate of Princeton University, his family owned Zinc. And when he graduated, he saw an area where people lived on Baker Street. And he said, this looks like a nice area for something like Rockefeller Center. So he displaced the people from Palmer Square, which was a first urban renewal, and moved most of the houses down to Birch Avenue. Then there is Jackson Street. That's why it's called the Witherspoon-Jackson community, because Jackson Street started our community. Jackson Street was where Paul Robeson Place is now. And when it was demolished, it was then called Avalon, named after the property that was owned by Reverend Henry Van Dyke. And then it was changed to Paul Robeson Place. And the houses were demolished so that there could be a thoroughfare from Wiggin Street to 206. And since there was a wall that separated the white community from our community, they had to tear down that wall on John Street in order to go through. And the Baptist church, they wanted to remove the Baptist church. But Reverend Parker at that time said, no way are you going to move our church. So they had to reconfigure the property where the Baptist church is. So I think I'm going, and then the John Street wading pool, better known as Mary Moss Playground, that is now going to be not a park, but a playground with sprinklers, and hopefully it'll get done soon. So those are all of the sites that you have that we would like to locate. Some are not in the Witherspoon-Jackson community, but you have to know that we had businesses all throughout Princeton, even though we couldn't go to some of the businesses. So I'm going to turn this over now to Mr. Hillier, who will give you some idea of what the signs are going to look like.
Mayor, I could say we're handing out the materials while Mr. Hillier is to thank Shirley again for her work as historian for this neighborhood. And if you haven't gone on the tour, you're missing out. I think that everyone should take Shirley's tour, and whether it's presented as a series of markers, as on this sheet, or an oral tour, as we heard tonight, it's very enriching. So thank you, Shirley, for everything you continue to do for your hometown.
Just to pick up where Shirley was taking you, I'll give you the red line, and you all have maps in there. The red line is the tour, and it starts where Agricola is now, and that's where the newspaper was being published. And it goes down and goes on to Spring Street, where the hairdresser, where Mr. Hall's properties were. And then it comes along to Griggs Corner, which is here. As a grad student, I have to admit that I had breakfast every morning at 5 a.m. with Mr. Griggs, because that was when he was opened, and that's when architectural students went to bed. So that's a warm spot in my heart. Then we have the Heinz Plaza, and then we continue on past Robeson. This was this is the Art Center today, and that was the YMCA. And then we come down here. Here's the Baptist Church, and we come along and a short hop into Quarry Street to the Waxwood, and then on down John Street in here to the Legion Post, and then down here. And 17, this was a real little shopping center right here at the intersection of John Street and Lee Avenue. And then we come along here to the nursery school. These 19 represents the houses that were moved from Barclay Street up here in Palmer Square down to here. And then we go along, and this is the church that Shirley talked about, and this is the American Legion. And then we come down here to Clay Street, the location of the ice plant. And then we come to this corner, which is very important. This is the first Witherspoon School for Colored Children at the corner of Witherspoon and McLean. Across the street from that is the what was known as the African American Cemetery, which is part of the main cemetery, and then the AME church here, and then we terminate or finish the tour at the Presbyterian Church. Now, what we're proposing to do at each site, and this is a mock-up, but it's the actual size that we're proposing, and you have a close-up version of it. And the way it's going to work is we're going to have a historic picture of the building, and at the top here we have Heritage Tour, the Witherspoon Jackson community, and we're doing this symbol, which is quite similar to the African American Museum symbol in Washington, and it says Heritage Tour, and then it's a self-guided tour. This describes what it is, and here we have the map I just showed you engraved into the plaque, and we have each site is marked the way they'll be marked here, but we also have a "You Are Here" arrow. So at each different site, there'll be an arrow that says "You Are Here," and then another second arrow that says "Next." So it tells you, I'm here today and I'm going there next. And then down here we'll have a description of the importance of the site. And at the bottom we're saying this plaque donated by, and then we're going to, that's how we're going to fund this, is by getting corporations and foundations and just good people to donate. And we think it'll cost somewhere around $1,500 per plaque, including its installation. Now, Shirley has some wonderful old photos, and they're going to be, at each site, they will be engraved into this. The whole, this is going to be an aluminum plaque, and it's all going to be engraved, so it won't peel off or anything. That's the system we're going to use. And this is the actual size. We didn't want to do something this big. We thought that got a little obnoxious, and something too small wouldn't really be that easy to tell the whole story on. So that's where we are, if you can.
No, thank you.
A little better lighting here.
Yeah, I just wanted to let my colleagues know that this presentation was made to the HPC, and it was very, very well received there. People were really excited. The one suggestion that HPC had, which I thought was interesting, was to have a stencil, maybe like a colored stencil on the sidewalk that would be next to the plaque so that you could sort of follow along. They have that in other towns where there's a historic walk sometimes, but anyways, I think it's wonderful, and it's I mean, the plaques are beautiful. I don't know if anybody else had any.
I think that this is a unbelievable gesture, and something that we definitely need in the neighborhood. So many times people walk through and they ask questions, and I think this will answer a lot of those questions. And I think that you'll have for $1,500, I think you'll be surprised how many people will step up, corporations and also private people, to say, we'll take this one, they'll take that one, until everything's done. So I just want to say thank you.
Is there somebody who's collecting the money now, or if somebody hears this or sees it, who's moved to make a donation? Is there an organization that's...
the Witherspoon Jackson Cultural and Historic Society, or Historic and Cultural Society. And I'm the treasurer, actually.
Is there a Facebook page or a website or anything? Okay. Let us know. Maybe come back or send us an email and we can announce it so people know.
That would be great. Any other questions, thoughts?
No, it's a great job. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
I was a part of the Boy Scout local troop that put like QR codes.
You have to come to the mic so people can hear you. Even if you shout loud, yeah, because people are watching on TV and they can't hear you otherwise.
Oh, I'll do this. I was part of the local Boy Scout troop when an Eagle Scout project put like QR codes, like little two-dimensional black and white things. They could put their phone in. Most people with phones can pop the phone, it comes up with a website, and that's a way to link to even more historical information if it's on a website. A lot of people do that stuff. So, just a thought.
That we can set it up so that we have an app on the cell phone, like you have in the museum, so as you're walking along on the tour, you can hear Shirley tell the story. So.
That's great. Maybe there's somebody at the university who can help with that, because I know they have the apps for the art museum, for the sculpture, the public art tour that you can take, and there's some other things that they've done with curators explaining what you're looking at, and maybe there's some way to use the framework of what they've already done and
That's good.
plug in this.
We'll do that.
Thank you. All right. This is exciting. Do you have a calendar where you're hoping to have raised the money and?
We're working on that too. But I'd like to thank you all for this. It's very important to me, and I'm sure it's important. And I'd like to just acknowledge those who are here who helped work with the 20th Historic District. And we have Daniel Harris and Leighton Newland and Kip Cherry. Is there anyone else here? So I just want to thank them for all the hours that we spent, and also thank the council for all that you've done and for being so positive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So we'll pick up with reports with Ms. Howard. Any reports this evening?
None.
Mr. Liverman, any reports?
Yeah, the Youth Advisory Committee they've met, and the mayor came to our meeting, and it was a productive meeting. One area that they would like to concentrate on this year deals with sustainability. So I know Councilwoman Butler and myself met with the Princeton Sustainability Group, I think Molly Jones and Christine, and I had asked them what areas could the youth work with, and they had sent me some areas where the youth could work with sustainability here in Princeton. And a few of those areas I thought were pretty interesting. I just want to throw out there. One is an anti-idling education and enforcement campaign. EPA waste, adopt a green purchasing policy, energy tracking and management, and participating in the Green Fair with the Mercer County Green Fair program. So those are just a few areas that they may be working with this year, but I just want you to know that the youth are really interested in working with sustainability for the town of Princeton, which I thought was a great idea.
That's great. Thanks. Ms. Kremler, any reports? Ms. Butler, any reports?
Yes, I just want to call attention to the fact that the new fall and winter registration is available for the rec department. It's available online. We have a new look. Nicole, yep, we have a new form. So you can register online. The Dillon Basketball League has been expanded to now include 10th graders. So yay, everybody will be happy about that. First aid and CPR class is open to the public, being offered October 24th and 5th with evening classes both nights. So you can register online or call the rec department. And since our engineer is absent, Mary Moss Playground construction will go out to bid during the week of October 23rd. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Quinn? Any reports?
No reports.
Okay. I have several reports, so bear with me. The first is Councilman Miller, who's not here tonight, and I met with a resident who's interested in donating a work of art to the municipality, and we realized we get offers of these donations every once in a while, and it would be really helpful to have some sort of arts committee that would meet on even just an as-needed basis. We had a group come together for the Gates project at Heinz Plaza, and we put another group together of similar folks for the Avalon Bay Public Art, and it would just be helpful to have this standing group, and you have somebody from the Arts Council, maybe somebody from the Princeton University Art Museum, and other local artists who could help, because Bernie and I felt not quite qualified to make decisions like this. So if that's something that's council supports, I would, put together a resolution and, we could staff the committee even based on certain organizations and asking them to send a representative. Ms.
I would
Butler?
definitely support it. I think I actually recommended it at a previous time, but I'd also ask for somebody from rec to be on it, because oftentimes, people want to put things in the park. That's come up.
Okay, good.
I would add that when the new library opened in 2004, they had a large and active art committee that not only decided on the public art, but did some fundraising around it as well. So if we could keep the library in mind there.
Okay.
I think they also got involved in things like the furniture in the plaza and even the tree wells. They were involved in a lot of
Right.
aesthetics of the library.
And I would foresee something like if it's public art, depending on where that public art is, we would want to bring in potentially extra people to the committee for that particular acquisition. So, if it's something in Mary Moss Playground or something in, I don't know, somewhere else on the other side of town that you'd want to have who's ever close to it, have some representation for that decision.
And at the time, I'm not sure whether this is still available. The New Jersey State Council of the Arts made advisors available for municipal
Oh, okay.
projects. So assuming that funding is still in place, we might be able to avail ourselves of advice for specific installations that we're considering.
Terrific, thank you. And then I have a few more reports. The other is we're continuing to work on our application for the Bloomberg Challenge, and refocused what is likely going to be our application to something around food waste, because the community has already been doing so much already, but are there creative ways we can help to make our make what's being thrown in the compost bins cleaner? And is there a way to perhaps work with local farms and maybe do a public-private partnership with a digester that's nearby on a farm? So anyway, there's some really cool ideas floating around, and I hope we have a good application to submit. If we win, it's potentially $5 million, but
And Mayor, is the university at all involved? Because
yes,
they do-
definitely.
I just noticed the other day that they send the food waste to a local farm.
Right, although they have just purchased their own digester, and so they're going to be doing a pilot project at the university. And so there's just a lot of exciting work going on in town regarding this. So we're hoping we can, and they're definitely at the table. The head of the New Jersey Organic Farming Association lives in town. He's helping out, and of course, Sustainable Princeton. So I hope to have some good news on that in the future. There was a meeting with with Josh Zinder and a couple of folks from the PMA about signage, and so Mr. Zinder came forward with his proposal on changes to the sign ordinance. That's being sent to the HPC. Yeah, that meeting happened, and I was surprised there weren't more of my colleagues at the meeting, and I think there was a disconnect with the invite that went out, but it'll go to HPC, and then it'll come back to us probably at the beginning of the year.
I mean,
I might have missed it.
Bernie and I, it originally started with the ordinance review, right? So that would have been Bernie, Jenny, and myself.
Right.
We're the ones that had the meetings with him and sent him out to do that, which he never, well,
Anyways,
We'll
done.
We'll work going forward
Yes.
together. So
yeah, I apologize. I was just paying attention to my own email and not to the distribution list, and then I was actually about to text a bunch of people, like, where are you? So, anyways. But the positive side is I think there's some really good recommendations in there, and I do think it makes sense to take everything together as a package and have a sign meeting or a meeting where we devote a lot of time to dealing with the sign issue, because each piece of it feeds on the other, and instead of trying to take little pieces of it, my strong feeling at the end of that meeting was we should do the whole thing as a package together.
Did you,
I have some extra copies that I will distribute for folks to take a
were
look.
there any staff members there?
Yes,
Was Lee there? Because, I mean,
I believe
that
so.
Lee and Derek were also involved in all the previous discussions, and there was some question about that strategy of trying to do all the signs at once.
Okay.
Just FYI.
Okay. Let's see. Then I have a bunch of announcements related to Princeton University. The first is that many of us attended the opening for the Lewis Center. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, it's an absolutely stunning building, especially from the inside. And I know I think the opening weekend is over, but I expect there's going to be lots of performances there over the course of the rest of the school year. So if you haven't been there, I highly recommend a visit. The university's campus plan is now expected to be issued in late November. And the university is we're going to schedule them for a meeting. Assuming they stay on track with that, we'll schedule them to come in early December to present the plan, and that hopefully would be a joint meeting with the planning board. And originally, President Eisgruber was going to be meeting with council right before the campus plan was going to come out, so instead that's going to be rescheduled for early 2018. And then I also wanted to mention that the university is working with some groups in the community too to put together the Princeton Slavery Project, which is an arts history, and there's going to be lectures, and it's going to be mainly in the month of November. Toni Morrison is going to be coming to campus to deliver the keynote. McCarter Theater is putting on a series of specially commissioned short plays called the Princeton and Slavery Plays that are based on historical documents that were uncovered as part of the research project leading up to this series of events. And also the Art Museum is going to be having several special exhibitions and some special commissions related to African American identity. So it sounds like it's going to be a really interesting set of events. So I encourage everybody to take a look at what the offerings are. And that's it for my reports. Any staff reports? Nope. Okay. Then we can move on to ordinance introductions. The first is 2017-55, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton amending Chapter 2 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. And this description is a little vague, but it has to do with just clarifying what the different descriptions are for emergency services and the who reports to who. Is that, Mr. Shield, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Basically what it does, it takes a number of references that were throughout the code that talks about the Director of Emergency Services, his job descriptions, duties, and responsibilities, and moves them into Chapter 2, which is where most of the department heads and department duties and responsibilities are. So it's really moving those, and there's some slight adjustments in terms of just making sure all of the codes doesn't refer back to any old borough or township codes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or discussions about this ordinance? Yeah, Ms. Miller?
Yeah, I think I had two. In section 283A, it talks about a strategic plan. It says, Princeton Fire Safety Inspection Unit and Housing Unit, oversee the development of a strategic plan for the future operations of the Bureau, including blah, blah, blah. And I just wondered if that goes in an ordinance. I mean, isn't it, do we usually adopt ordinances that talk about the future? Because when that's finished, it's not going to be the future, you know. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I just wondered why.
My reading of that, it's really just talking about ongoing duties, not a specific strategic plan, but ongoing duties. And I know it's the way it's written, it does seem like it's one plan.
A strategic plan? Okay, that makes sense, but maybe the wording could be changed a tiny bit to reflect that. But unless no one else thinks that's an issue, maybe I just read it that way. The other minor question that now I can't find where I found it, but it referred to a safety committee. And I didn't know if do we have was that supposed to be public safety committee, or do we have a committee called the safety committee?
Safety committee. That's the employee safety committee that's established through the JIFT, the Joint Insurance Fund. It really goes through, this is for all the employee accidents. They review the accidents, review safety throughout the municipality. And there actually is a safety committee.
Okay, maybe let me try to find it, because maybe it should be capitalized then or something. It says here it is, under
D.
283D, responsible for overseeing the safety committee and coordinating safety compliance. And so maybe safety committee should be capitalized. I mean, if it's referring to, and maybe it should be employee safety committee, just because I don't know if everybody else is already familiar with this term safety committee.
Would it be the employee safety? It's the employee safety committee. Would that help?
Yes, definitely. And I think it should be capitalized. Those are my two comments.
Can we move it as,
Well, I just want to make sure that there was specific language recommended for the first change, or was there? I think there was for the Employee Safety Committee, but I'm not sure about the first question, if there was specific language that was being recommended for that.
How about
I can
strategic
make a
plans?
suggested- Well, I mean, one suggested revision, oversee the development and maintenance of a strategic plan for the operations of the Bureau, including personnel, equipment, and facilities. Take out future, insert maintenance,
Okay.
makes it more of an
Yeah,
ongoing
I was
thing.
going to say, or strategic plans, just development of strategic plans, but either one.
Sure. I'll add that in too.
Okay, so is there a motion to introduce? And I think that the second change is clear. The first one, we had two options, so
So moved?
we have to choose. which
Oh,
one
oh.
we're moving. Did you want to use Trishka's language or your language?
pick one?
Well, do we have a strategic plan right now? Already? Because if it says develop a strategic plan. Okay.
So what that's referring to for both bureaus specifically deals with the inspections to make sure that we have a plan going forward that addresses us, make sure we do all life hazard inspections, that we complete inspections that are required by ordinance, both housing and fire safety as well. So that's what the plan actually is, and I guess instead of using a lot of words, it was just easier to try to focus it as our strategic plan.
But is there one right now that's in place already, or?
Yeah, every year we go through again, like how are we going to attack the inspection process, new businesses, things like that. So
I don't
it's
think that's a
yearly
strategic
thing.
plan. I think that's part of the confusion.
Could be. Right. So when we wrote
Work
it, we had a
plan.
lot of words in it, and I guess going through the process with everybody, they tried to simplify it by using that. So maybe it's another term we need to use.
The work plan sounded, management or work plan sounds better.
And I think the development and maintenance is a good.
How about oversee the annual development and maintenance of a work plan for the operations of the Bureau, including personnel, equipment, and facilities, since Bob said it's something that they do annually.
Okay, that sounds good. Kathy, did you get that? She nodded yes, amazingly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I did just have one other minor question. So Bob, stay there.
Yeah.
So nothing is changing in the structure, right, of all of this? Like the fire official and the duties aren't changing. They're just being,
Correct.
okay.
No.
Okay, so do you want to make a motion with the two changes?
I'd like to move this with the two changes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Krummeller and seconded by Mr. Liverman. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Crum-Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
So the ordinance has been introduced, and the public hearing will be on November 13th, 2017. Thanks, Bob. The next is 2017-56, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton concerning the Princeton Fire Department and amending Chapter 8 of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968, and the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. And again, this is a similar house cleaning ordinance for the fire department. Mr. Shield, did you have any additional information?
Sure. Basically, what the changes to this ordinance include, one, making some revisions to some of the department membership qualifications and training, just to bring those up to date. The major change, and I could let Bob speak to that, is the procedures for the selection of the chief. And basically that, one, eliminates confusion, but also there's a new piece to that. And then just clarifying language throughout the ordinance concerning different things like the chain of command and references to other parts of the ordinances. But I can let Bob talk about the chief's process.
So as far as the chief process goes, selecting the chief, it didn't change much at all. What we did was give members a little more time to get their paperwork into the clerk's office because it was always a rush. The time periods were pretty short, so we kind of loosened them up a little bit just to give people more time. And then the other thing is each company provides a member, usually an ex-chief from their company, to be on a committee, as well as the Director of Emergency Services and the Administrator. So in the past, the three chiefs had voted, the three ex-chiefs would vote for the chief. What we did was we changed so that the Director of Emergency Service and the Administrator get to have a say in that process now. We're just not facilitating it. So I went around and around with the officers and membership, you know, just revisiting, is this the best way we should do it? And pretty much the consensus was they didn't want to change how we did it. You know, they wanted to keep it the same, but with input from myself and the administrator or the assistant administrator if the administrator can't make it to the process.
Wait, can you, are you saying that there was not the consensus to make
It
this
was
change?
the consensus.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of different options, you know, going back to an overall vote, a different type of committee, just to revisit how it was done in the past, and pretty much everybody felt this was, it's been working, so keep it that way.
Bob, one question. I know this is like language from 50 years ago, I guess.
Right.
I mean, because I look at it, and when I read, well, yeah, I mean, when I read it, it said, be of good moral character. Who's the person that decides that?
Right. So a lot of that stuff's in there, and I didn't think it was my place just for me to go make changes to things like that.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. And that is from probably the beginning of time, because Princeton was here at the beginning of time, that those things were written in there. But yeah, I know what you're saying about that.
I think we should take it out. Because who's judging that? And we're not in the job.
It's a fair point. Yep.
Section 8.4 is the first one, be of good moral character. The first one to go.
Some of the other things that Mark was referring to too is there were references to like the borough administrator or the township, so they cleaned a lot of that up and got it out as well.
I mean, just to get at the issue, would you want to do a background check or something? I mean, if you were worried about someone being of bad moral character.
Well, our membership process does include a background check.
It does?
Yes.
So,
Yep.
I mean, you could put that in the ordinance. I don't know. But it sounds like you don't care.
But aren't there other guidelines that was established through the
Yes.
departments? And I think that's really the key,
Right.
is those guidelines that were established.
Right, so there's guidelines established for membership so that when we do the background check and things like that come back, we have something to judge it against.
Thank you. Is there, Mr. Carmiller?
Yeah, I have one was, I just wondered if the annual report could be submitted to the administrator and the mayor and council. It looks like it's page 8. Wait, let me see if I have that right.
Page 8?
I think it's on this, it has a page number at the bottom.
Can you give us just the section number that you're in?
I'm looking, sorry. Well, the other question is a bigger, more global question, and that's about the 3 fire companies. So I'll look for that. Well, is there any hope of consolidating the 3 fire companies? Is that ever? Because I know that was talked about when we consolidated, and I know I've heard that that it's been harder and harder to recruit members, and we have 3 separate fire companies, and they all have their own identities, and now we're basically consolidated physically, but there's still 3 companies. And is there any reason that we should try to help along consolidation, or is there not a reason?
So going back to the history, the operations were what was consolidated. So to have everything under one roof so that members would just have one place to go to get the apparatus out. The 3 companies are still alive and well, and how we basically work the process is when people come to join, if they have a family member with one company, usually they'll join that company. But if there's no affiliation, we just put the members, in the company, starting with 61, and then another member goes to Hook and Ladder, another member to Mercer Engine 63. So the companies still have members, and the department firematically operates as one. The company piece of it is still kind of more of their social piece of the firehouse. So, I mean, nothing has been officially discussed with the fire department on doing something like that. The companies have, in my opinion, felt strong about, keeping their history alive and staying as companies making up the Princeton Fire Department.
And I will say, when we did consolidate, one of the things that we did mention was that they could keep their independent companies, but they had to be together under
Right.
one roof. So that was one of the items that we did say that they could do to help bring everyone together.
Right, yeah, and it has help with the operation, so we don't have members scattered at 3 different fire stations.
I found the annual report stuff.
Oh,
Did
yeah,
you
I did
find it?
too.
Okay,
8.2.
821, right.
821.
It's under A.
Yeah, we can
On
just
page 11.
add that it'll be submitted to the administrator and the mayor and council.
So it sounds like the company issue is at an equilibrium. Everything's cool with that?
Yeah, I mean, we're operating, the companies operate, and like anything, depending on time of year, depends on how many people you get at a meeting, so.
Anybody else? Ms. Butler?
No, I was going to move it.
Okay.
Move it with that.
With the mayor and
change to
council?
Add mayor and council.
All right, is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Ms. Krummeler. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 The ordinance has been introduced, and the public hearing will be on November 13th, 2017. Thanks a
you.
lot. Yep. Thank you, Jenny,
Thanks,
for
Bob.
your recommendations. All right, next we come to resolutions. We have Resolution 17-317, resolution terminating Trinity Church parking lot lease. And Mr. DeShield, can you just explain what we're doing here?
Yes, Mayor. Princeton has had a lease with the Trinity Church for using their parking lots as public parking. We have 23 meters on the lot and 16 spaces we were leasing from Trinity Church. We had a lease agreement. Trinity Church has indicated they no longer would like to continue that lease with the municipality. We reviewed the facilities. Their biggest concern are the metered lots in the front of the property. They need the access for the programs that they are having currently at the church. They have agreed, they would like to terminate the lease. They have agreed to allow us to continue with the permit parking for those permit holders we have until June 30th of 2018. And they're in talks with us now to look at whether we can continue some type of relationship, particularly with the permit spaces, the 16 spaces in the rear, and we're continuing discussions with them. This would terminate the lease. For that purpose, we'll continue to work, and the 16 spaces, 6 spaces in the back will continue until June 30th.
I'll move it.
It's been moved by Ms. Howard.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Liverman. Are there any questions or further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the resolution passes unanimously. And now we come to our consent agenda. I would like to remove one item from the consent agenda, which is 17-322, which is a resolution authorizing appointments to boards, commissions, and committees, and take that up now. And I wanted to recommend that we amend that resolution to add Dr. Varunda Patel as a new member of the Board of Health. And she should come in as an alternate. There's alternates on the Board of Health and there's 2 alternates on the Board of Health.
Yes.
And then move up the corresponding alternates into regular, one person would bump into a regular position.
I move.
Consent agenda?
Yeah.
This
Are
is,
you gonna-
no, this is
No,
just the
I move-
17.
Yeah,
The
but
amendment to the agenda.
Don't we want to do the consent agenda? And
I don't think we can make an amendment to it, so I see, too.
You pulled an item.
Right, exactly.
Right, so let's pass the consent agenda and
Okay, so
then
is,
deal with.
I make a motion that we pass the consent agenda in block except for 17-322.
all right.
Second.
It's moved by Mr. Liverman, seconded by Ms. Butler. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then for 17-322, is there a motion to pass that item with the proposed amendment?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Ms. Howard, seconded by Mr. Liverman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that resolution passes unanimously as well. And is there
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn by Ms. Krummeller?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.